Well, to discuss the recent string of violent clashes at Trump rallies a little bit further, I'm now joined by Daniel Shaw, a lecturer at the City University of New York. Daniel, thank you very much for being with us here on RT International. In recent months, Trump's rallies seem to have become something of a magnet for violence, something that he hasn't really discouraged early on in his campaign. But wherever he goes, clashes follow. What is it about this particular politician that sparks such intense emotions across the country?
Well, Trump is the very personification of fascism, of bigotry, of white supremacy, of misogyny. So we saw last night the people of Albuquerque stood up, and tonight it's Anaheim. A few months ago it was Chicago. So wherever Trump rears his fascist head, the people of this country are standing up and protesting to say no Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA.
Now, you mentioned fascism as kind of one of the key motivators here, but what other political and social groups really constitute the core of the so-called anti-Trump movement?
The anti-Trump movement really brings together the multinational working class. We see Muslim groups coming together. We see LGBT groups. We see women's organizations. Of course, we see the immigrant rights movement and Mexican and indigenous movements. So it's really a cross-section of the multinational working class of the United States.
Well, what's the driving force behind their motivation? I mean, it's unlikely, in fact, it's almost impossible at this point that they can keep the nomination away from him. So what are they trying to achieve?
Well, the protest movement wants to send a clear message that Trump does not represent the masses of people of this country. His interests are the polar opposite of the interests of the workers. Shame on the media, who's given billions of dollars of free coverage to bigotry and to fascism. They've really given him a media megaphone to spread his ugly messages. So the people want to send a clear message that this is a campaign that is against their interests, and we understand all too well who's truly interested for the lowering of workers' wages and the conditions that we live in across this country.
Now, Daniel, you bring up a good point about this, the media megaphone, if you will. Do you think that these protests kind of play into the hands of Trump and his supporters? I mean, on some levels, any publicity is good publicity.
Well, I don't think it's that clear cut. I mean, he was interrupted last night. He was forced out of a side door. We've seen him in Albuquerque. We've seen him have to hop fences, which is, of course, very ironic when he's calling for this wall to be built on the Mexican border. No Mexican ever voluntarily left their homeland. These are economic and social conditions and a history of U.S. oppression of Mexico and Latin America that have forced people to involuntarily migrate. So we understand the importance of the protest movement, and the protest movement is a unifying factor for all these different groups who are coming out against Trump and against the ruling class agenda that's behind him.
Now, if we look at the bigger picture of American society in general, is the rift there deepening dramatically? Has the United States gone past the point of no return in terms of like a political divide?
There's an immense political divide. In fact, part of the Republican establishment will probably come over to Hillary Clinton if she is indeed the candidate for the Democratic Party, because the ruling class does not prefer Trump as their candidate. If Trump were to win the U.S. election, then on January 20th, 2017, you would have demonstrations of millions of people in Washington, D.C., in Los Angeles, across this country, and across the world. So the ruling class highly prefers a Hillary Clinton electoral victory, because that means that capitalism and imperialism can be stabilized, whereas Trump means widespread protest movement.
All right. Very interesting to hear your thoughts. Daniel Shaw, lecturer at the City University of New York. Thanks for being with us here on RT International.
Thank you.